On a cold, wet, windy night in January of 1911, the Atlanta Ripper claimed his first victim, Rosa Trice. The Atlanta Ripper derailed Atlanta, Georgia from 1911 through 1912, killing between 15 to 20 women. During these races' time, Atlanta had seen more progressive with more opportunities for the once enslaved African Americans.
However, this heinous villain, who eventually became known as the Atlanta Ripper, only targeted young African American women. Even now, 100 years later, the horrendous murders remain unsolved. The first victim, Rosa Trice, was only 35 years old when her body was found. The left side of her head was crushed and her throat was so deeply cut that her head was almost completely severed from her body.
After Mary Bell Walker was found with her throat cut only yards from her home on May 28, 1911, the white-only press printed the first article in the newspapers regarding the gruesome murders.
Shortly after Miss Walker's death, Addie Watts and Lizzie Watkins were found slayed with their throats cut in June of 1911. It was hopeful that a break in the case had been made on July 1st, 1911, when Emma Lou Sharp survived an attack from a man described as tall, black, with broad shoulders. She had gone out looking for her mother, who had not returned from the market, when she was approached by a man who, after a short conversation, stabbed her in the back. She was able to escape, but later the body of her mother, Lena, was found with her head almost detached from her body.
However, the man Miss Sharp later identified as Todd Henderson was released without being convicted. Many of the other victims were found in the Grant Park area, a residential district known for its Victoria mansions. One common element of all the murders, besides the race, the gender of the victims, and the monstrous ways in which the victims were killed, was the fact that many were found with their shoes cut off their lifeless feet.
By spring, there had been several arrests, but they were all later released as the murders continued. Each case had a major stir in the African American community. When it was discovered that the majority of the murders were occurring on Saturday nights, the Ripper changed his patterns.
Although most of the killings occurred during the night on deserted streets, a curfew was never enforced. The Ripper would use different resources found close to his stalked prey to make each murder a little unique in its own way. One of the victims was stabbed in the back multiple times as a horrified witness stood by and watched the young woman scream for help as the murderer laughed at the girl as she was laying dying on the ground. The Ripper bashed in another victim's head with a train nail.
Then on November 21st, 1911, Mary Putnam was found disemboweled with her head almost completely removed from her neck. Her heart had been taken from her body and left lying beside her. Although several African American churches had come together to offer a substantial award for his capture, at least 6 men were arrested for the murders. Only one was convicted.
In April 1912, Charlie Owens was sentenced to life for at least one of the murders, but it was never disclosed which one. In March of 1912, the grand jury concluded that each of the Ripper's murders were actually committed by a different man due to jealousy, supposedly surrounded by unfaithful behaviors.
As things returned to normal nearly 3 years after the first Ripper murder, firefighters discovered several notes left in fireboxes around the Atlanta area. The notes were signed by Jack the Ripper and threatened to cut the throats of all Negro women caught after dark. Was this just a prank, or was this the Ripper bragging through the use of these notes that he had gotten away with multiple murders?
We will never know.